Hello, my name is Holly Maddie. I'm with Crossroads Community Planning. We are a consulting firm that has been hired by the township to prepare a quick strategy guide to plan for the development pressures that the township has been experiencing over the past several years. These development pressures have been escalated with the recent announcement of Intel, a new microchip facility being constructed in New Albany, immediately south of Harlem Township. The township trustees recognize the need to plan and respond to these increasing development pressures and appointed a 7-member strategic planning committee to help guide the planning process, to guide us as consultants in this process. The strategic planning committee is made up of one representative from the Board of Trustees, one representative from the Township Zoning Commission, one representative from the Board of Zoning Appeals, the zoning inspector, and then 3 at-large residents. This presentation will cover the same slides that we reviewed at a series of community meetings held between the months of January and February of 2023. Before we get started, I would like to point out that Harlem Township completed a comprehensive plan that was adopted in November of 2021, just a couple of months prior to the announcement of Intel. The current comprehensive plan includes several guiding principles and recommendations that will continue to guide the township's planning policies and procedures. The intent of the Quick Strategy Guide is not to replace the current plan, but to build upon it based upon the quickly changing development landscape in and around the township. This slide represents the chapters that can be found within the Quick Strategy Guide. The first thing we did with the Strategic Planning Committee was complete a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, which is otherwise known as a SWOT analysis. It was clear from this exercise that sewers and annexation are the 2 immediate threats to the township. Communications also came up as a weakness of the township. These are 3 things that we will be covering in this plan. Crossroads also went out to Chandler, Arizona, where Intel has developed previously, and we learned about best practices and things that they may do differently if they had an opportunity to do it again. So that helps us bring back to Ohio what maybe we can do and improve going forward. We also interviewed a number of both private and public stakeholders to better understand the market demands, the infrastructure coming towards the township, and other things that may influence the growth in the township. We also held a public meeting in August at a church in Harlem Township. And this meeting was open to all of the residents and property owners within the township. It was our first meeting to help introduce what we were starting to learn through the process. We followed that up with a survey to all residents and property owners, and we're going to go over what we've heard both at that meeting as well as the survey. We're also going to quickly talk about what happens if we do nothing, and we have 2 case studies to help us through that. And then finally, we're going to talk about specific recommendations and then how we get from where we are today to what those recommendations are for the future. So let's start with what we have learned. Intel has 2 sites in Chandler, Arizona, a suburb of Phoenix. The first site started in 1979, and the second site started in the 1990s and is currently expanding. This map shows a series of drive times in and around the 1979 Intel site. I want to walk you through this map so that you fully understand what it's representing. This blue icon in the middle of the map is the 1979 Intel site. The red line is a 5-minute drive time from the doorstep of Intel. The green line is 10-minute drive time, and the blue line is a 15-minute drive time. There are also a series of colors that represent the different development stages of parcels. Parcels that were developed prior to 1979 when Intel arrived are represented by red. Parcels that were developed after 1979, so after Intel came in, are represented by purple. The darker the red, the earlier the parcel developed. The darker the purple, the closer that parcel developed to today's time. Anything that is white or light purple developed right around 1979 or within the first 10 years of when Intel came in. You'll see when you look at this map that there are very few red parcels within the 15-minute drive time. This means most of the area was still farmland. It was dairy farms. It was not developed. You'll also see very few dark purple parcels, meaning that there are very few that have developed closer to today's time. What you do see is a lot of white and light purple. This means that most of the area within the 15-minute drive time of this Intel site developed within the first 10 years of Intel arriving. This slide is just another perspective showing that rapidly growing area of Chandler, Arizona. These are the aerials obtained from the county in Arizona, showing the Intel site with an arrow, orange arrow pointing to it. You'll see up in the left-hand corner in 1979, it is mostly vacant dairy farms. In the bottom left-hand corner in 1986, it's already rapidly growing in that area with many of the parcels being developed in just a short 7 years. And then over to the right, by 1996, that area is completely built out. So how does this translate into Ohio? This map is a similar map to that of Chandler, but this is a map of the New Albany Intel site. The New Albany Intel site is represented by the blue icon, kind of on the right-hand side of your screen there. The red shaded area is a 5-minute drive time from the Intel site in New Albany. The green shaded area is a 10-minute drive time, and the blue shaded area is a 15-minute drive time. The black square represents the boundaries of Harlem Township. So you can see by this map, almost 50% of the township is within a 10-minute drive time, and 90% of the township is within a 15-minute drive time. So remembering back to the Chandler map, where in the first 10 years, most of the 15-minute drive time was developed. If history would repeat itself, most of Harlem Township would develop within the first 10 years of Intel arriving in New Albany. A lot of people say, well, how does infrastructure play into this? So in our research, we have found that there are 3 sewer lines that are coming towards Harlem Township. Starting in the southwest corner, represented by a yellow dot on the map, that yellow dot is approximately the location of the Smothers Road roundabout at Harlem Road. The City of Columbus is currently building a tunnel line, a sewer tunnel line, coming to the north that will terminate right about around the area of the Smothers Road roundabout. At that point in time, the City of Columbus has an agreement with Delaware County Sewers to extend the sewers into Harlem Township. That is an agreement that was put in place back when Polaris went into Delaware County. That agreement has been sitting there for years, but now with all of the development pressures coming towards this area, the City of Columbus has executed on moving that sewer forward. And Delaware County is planning to extend these feeder lines into Harlem Township. We'll talk more about that, but in a few minutes. But just know that the sewer is coming this way and will be here to that southwest corner of the township by 2026. Moving to the right is a red dot. There's currently a line that extends to that area in New Albany. Again, it's a City of Columbus line, and we don't have an exact time of when that might be extended to the north and where exactly it may go. What I can tell you is that we have a map from 2017 that was provided by the City of Columbus that shows the sewer line being extended up South County Line Road, which is the eastern boundary of the township. We also know that developers are currently assembling land to the east of South County Line Road and also along 62, just to the southeast of the township. The New Albany Company and other developers are assembling land. So we need to assume that at some point in time, the sewers are going to come to this area as well. Moving up to the northwest corner, this is one area that really took, I think, the Strategic Planning Committee and myself a little bit more by surprise. And that there is a sewer up in the city of Galena. They have recently expanded their sewer treatment plant. And talking to their project engineer, the city of Galena is ready, willing, and able to extend sewers into Harlem Township. It would go into the northwest corner there. Now, having said that, the village of Galena would require annexation for that to occur. So that is something that we have to keep an eye on, is how do property owners annex and how close are properties to annexing? Well, in this particular case, in this northwest corner, there are a handful of properties between Galena and Harlem Township. But after reviewing property records, those handful of properties are all owned by just 2 owners. Annexation is a property owner-driven process, so it only takes those 2 owners to say they want to be annexed into the village of Galena, and then the northwest corner of the township is open for annexation to the village. On the south side, we don't have to worry so much about annexation just because of the sewers, because the city of Columbus is providing those at that southwest corner. I always say there's 2 reasons why a landowner wants to annex into an adjacent community. One is to get the sewers. In this case, in the southwest corner, they don't need those sewers to annex because they're coming anyways. They're coming. They don't need to annex to get them. The other reason is for zoning. On the south side, we need to be cognizant of the zoning, because if property is contiguous to an adjacent community, those communities can, the property owners can request annexation into those communities to get more favorable zoning. So we have to be concerned and aware of what the township zoning is to avoid potential annexation. And a note on annexation. The way annexation operates is that a property owner requests it. It is a property owner-driven request. There are 5 different types of annexation. I don't want to go into all of those on this presentation, but I will tell you the biggest threat to Harlem Township is the Type 2 expedited annexation. This is the type of annexation where a property owner and the adjacent municipality agree to be annexed, for the property to be annexed. In these particular cases, under the Ohio Revised Code, there are only certain technical items that must be met. When those technical items are met and it's submitted to the Delaware County Board of Commissioners for approval, as long as the Delaware County Commissioners can check off that those technical items have been met, then there is no ability for the Delaware County Commissioners to deny the annexation. They must approve it. And there is no appeal to the annexation or any other way that a resident, surrounding residents, could potentially stop that annexation. So that is the biggest concern, is the Type 2 expedited annexation. And again, it's usually 2 reasons that people try to annex. 1 is for sewers and 2 is for zoning. On the northwest side, you have both the reason of zoning and the sewers for potential annexation. And on the southwest side, even though the sewers are coming there, you still have the potential of annexation of that area for more favorable zoning. As I mentioned before, Crossroads went out to Arizona to learn about best practices and lessons learned when Intel went into that area. We spent the day there, we took a number of pictures, and we learned a lot while we were out there. But for this presentation, I have narrowed it down to this one slide, which shows what it looks like 4 miles from the Intel site. I thought that was most significant to Harlem Township because you are approximately 4 miles from the New Albany site. When you look at the Chandler, Arizona area, 4 miles away is predominantly housing. There are a few offices to the north, but 90 to 95% of the area is housing. When I look at the type of housing there and eyeball it, I would say it's about 4 dwelling units per acre for the single family. There is some multifamily as well, but it's predominantly single family, about 4 units an acre. When we talk to the professional real estate agents out there, the biggest takeaway from them was that there was not enough commercial in and around Intel site itself. With it mostly being housing, there weren't any places for the residents to get their coffee in the morning, take their kids to daycare, go to the grocery store, and all of the service type industries that you would associate with residential uses, neighborhood commercial. So they said if there was anything that they could do again in Chandler, that they would promote having more retail, commercial, neighborhood commercial intertwined with the residential neighborhoods. We heard this from multiple real estate professionals, not just one, it was from all of them. So this was a lesson that we learned from the Chandler example and that we've integrated into the recommendations as we move forward with Harlem Township. As we develop the recommendations for the quick strategy guide, we need to assure that we are incorporating the resident feedback that we have obtained through both the August public meeting and the resident survey that took place last fall. There were over 200 people who attended the public meeting last August. There were definitely differing opinions at that meeting, but there was one overall theme that most people agreed upon. The township needs to maintain its rural character. Above and beyond that, there were residents who absolutely wanted no development in Harlem Township, while there were others who said they were willing to accept some development as long as it was controlled development and it helped to prevent annexation of neighboring communities. Moving on to the survey, we had 359 responses. The demographics of the respondents closely resembles the demographics of the township as a whole. Looking at the age pyramid on the right, you will see the bottom rung of the pyramid is the 65 and older population. It had the most respondents. This is also the largest age group in the township when you look at the demographics. I also want to point out that if you look towards the top of the pyramid, you'll see the age group of 35 to 44 years old. That age group, as far as the responses, is starting to push out towards some of the larger older population response rates. This is also true of the demographics for the township. We're seeing a younger population of 35 to 44-year-olds moving into the township. This also translates into the years lived in the township. If you look on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that the most responses to the survey were those that have lived here for 25 years or more. Legacy property owners correlates with our older population. But also look on the left-hand side of that graphic. Less than 5 years and 5 to 14 years, when you put those two together, that's 50% of the respondents to the survey, which again closely represents the demographics of the township. You have several legacy property owners that have lived here for 25 years or more, and you have many, many newer households that have moved into the township in the last 15 years. This means that we have two audiences that we are trying to communicate with and plan for. If you remember back to the SWOT analysis, I mentioned that communications was a weakness. It became a weakness because one reason is because we have two demographics that the township's trying to communicate with. We have a group that wants a physical copy of the communication in their hand. They want it mailed in the U.S. mail, and they want to communicate in person. There is another growing population that wants more of a digital platform. They want to participate remotely. They want to participate with social media, those sorts of things. So there are different ways that the township needs to communicate with their entire population. So we have tried through this process to communicate in multiple ways. We've mailed out the mailer cards in the mail, but with that we included the QR code. But we also included a phone number for those who didn't use the computer. And then in addition to the mailers, we also sent out an email to those that we have email addresses for. And we're trying to collect as many email addresses as we can for the township to help build that digital platform and digital communication ability for the township to respond to that younger growing population. The next question asks the types of preferred development to help prevent annexation. We provided a series of land uses, each associated with a picture, and we asked the respondents to click on the pictures of the types of land uses they were willing to accept if it were to help prevent annexation. The land uses ranged from clustered single family to multifamily to large industrial sites. There was also an option to say that they were willing to support none of the above. As you can see by the bar chart, clustered single family was clearly the preferred land use, followed by neighborhood commercial, and then equally to neighborhood commercial is none of the above. So we had several people that are willing to not accept any type of development. But it is clear that clustered single family is the preferred land use. For those of you who are not familiar with clustered single family, this is a type of land use where instead of spreading the lots that are allowed on a particular parcel across the entire parcel, you actually reduce the lot sizes and then cluster them on 50% of the land. The other 50% of the land is then preserved as open space. I'd like to point out too that age plays a role in types of preferred land uses. So as you can see with the chart on the bottom, the clustered single family was clearly preferred by all age groups. So that is something that we made sure we understood and played a role in our recommendations. On the left-hand side of this chart, you'll see that none of the above. The older the respondent, the more likely they were to not accept any type of new development. The younger the population, the more likely they were willing to accept neighborhood commercial and mixed use. So not only do we have two groups that we're trying to communicate with, but we also have two different groups that we're trying to plan land uses for. So we are taking all of this into consideration as we develop the recommendations for the Quick Strategy Guide. We also asked the question, would you be in favor of a zoning change to allow a greater density of housing to help prevent annexation? Approximately 63% of the respondents said no, they were unwilling to accept a greater density of housing. The remaining percentage of respondents is equally split between those who would support a greater density and those who are unsure. So you have approximately 36–37% that are willing or unsure if they are willing to accept a greater density of housing. The survey also asked, would you be willing to explore an option of a tax levy for the township to purchase strategic parcels to help prevent annexation? Almost 90% of the respondents said yes. I will caution that this question did not have any cost associated with it. If the township were to explore some type of program along these lines, I would highly recommend that it first identify the cost for land acquisition, determine how that translates into a millage for a potential tax levy, and to do a follow-up survey that has the cost associated with it to get a better indication of the respondents' willingness to pay depending upon the cost associated with it. So now let's move into what happens if we do nothing. There are two case studies that we will be looking at to help walk us through this portion of the presentation. The first case study is in Canal Winchester along US 33 in the southeast area of the Columbus region. You'll see on the right-hand side is a warehouse that's already in the city of Canal Winchester. On the left-hand side is a vacant agricultural field in an unincorporated township. The farmer of the land on the left decided they no longer wanted to farm that field. They reached out to a developer about potentially rezoning the land, annexing it into the city of Canal Winchester, and developing a warehouse similar to the one on the right-hand side of the screen. When it was going through the process of annexing into Canal Winchester and being rezoned, residents came out in droves against the rezoning. When the property owner saw the resistance of the adjacent neighbors and the possibility that Canal Winchester would not accept a warehouse, the property owner ended up going to the city of Columbus and asking them to annex it in. The city of Canal Winchester knew that Columbus would allow that type of warehouse, possibly even more intense, and possibly with no improvements to roadways, etc. So Canal Winchester ended up striking a deal with the landowner to allow some development, but to also include some improvements to this roadway that you see on your screen here, as well as some improvements to an adjacent interchange along US 33. So the moral of the story is that we need to plan for that piece of vacant land. If that were Harlan Township, what would we want to see there? Let's have a plan in place for it, and let's tell the developers, you can develop, but you have to develop this way to these standards. That way there's no pitting against community to community. This second example is a little closer to home to Harlan Township. It's located in Liberty Township along Sawmill Parkway in Delaware County. It's an example of how extensive litigation is costly and not always effective. It's a complicated case, so I'm not going to go into all the details. But what you do need to know is that a Walmart was pursuing this site in the early to mid-2000s. There was also a site in the city of Powell, and there were back and forth battles between the two sites. Residents in Liberty Township urged the township to deny the zoning for this parcel. The township ultimately denied it. The case was taken to court. The court case took several years to work its way through the system. There were appeals after appeals, and there were several $million of legal fees and court costs that were associated with this site. At the end of the day, the courts ruled in favor of the developer. Walmart had walked away by this point in time, and Target came in. Because the courts ruled that big box retail was allowed at this site, then Target was allowed to build. So this is a good example of how the denial of the zoning delayed the development, but it just cost several $million to lose their cases and end up with the big box retail anyways. Let's talk about housing a little bit. You recall when we looked at the Chandler, Arizona development, that it was predominantly housing surrounding the Intel site. Licking County just released a study that says that Intel needs about 5,800 to 6,500 new for sale housing units and about 2,700 to 3,000 new rental units over the next 10 years. I go back to the drive time maps. Housing demands don't stop at a Licking County border, a geographical border. Housing demands follow drive times. People want to live 10, 15 minutes from their place of employment. So these housing units that they're saying Intel needs really ends up being in Harlem Township for a good portion of it, if you look at the drive time maps. So we need to be ready to plan for housing in addition to the other supporting land uses. So let's talk a little bit about the potential sewer service area based upon the agreement between the City of Columbus and Delaware County. It's important that you kind of understand this because it really helps us to set the densities and proposed land uses going forward. The agreement between Delaware County and the City of Columbus allows for 4 people per acre. The blue box on your screen, blue rectangle, generally represents the potential area that sewers could extend based upon that agreement. The northern border of that blue box is Center Village Road. The southern border of that box is the township borderline and the Delaware County, Franklin County line, and it extends the full width of the township. That area is approximately 8,500 acres. Based upon 4 people per acre, that's approximately 34,000 people that the sewers could service. That does not necessarily mean 34,000 new residents. Every land use has a people per acre number that is associated with it. So you can work the different land uses, single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial. You can use their people per acre numbers and the acres for those different types of land uses to come up with different scenarios to get to 34,000 people. So that's what we did when Crossroads worked with the Strategic Planning Committee to come up with these land use analyses. We looked at what land uses were preferred by the residents based upon the survey. We looked at the number of people per acre that are associated with those different types of land uses, and then created the densities to get us approximately to where we needed to be to allow the service of the sanitary sewers based upon the agreement between Delaware County and the City of Columbus. So now we're going to move into our specific recommendations. As we move through these next few slides, it's important for everyone to understand that the township currently has an overlay zoning district that's referred to as the PRCD. That stands for Planned Residential Conservation Zoning District. This overlay district lays over or hovers over all the land that is currently zoned AR1 or FR1. It acts as a cloud over those existing land uses. Landowners can continue to operate under their current zoning of AR1 or FR1, or if they want to sell to a developer and pull down that PRCD cloud, they can do that. The PRCD cloud allows them to cluster the development to 50% of their land and then keep the remaining 50% as green space. The important thing here to understand is that the current PRCD is based upon on-site well and septic systems. It only allows a net of 2 acres per one dwelling unit. We utilize this concept as our starting point for our recommendations, and then we build upon that we build upon the densities to support the sewers. So I wanted everybody to be aware that we have this current PRCD that we are utilizing as our basis of our recommendations going forward. So having that understanding of the current PRCD, we are recommending that the township add several zoning overlay districts. We're recommending that they add a second planned residential conservation overlay district, similar to the PRCD that they have today, but one that allows higher densities to support the sewers. We're also recommending a mixed-use overlay district and a rural town center overlay district. Each of these districts would have their own design standards that would help maintain the rural character that we know the residents want to preserve. This map illustrates the areas where we are proposing the various overlay districts. The yellow area is proposed to retain the current PRCD overlay district with net 2 acres. The orange areas are where we are proposing a second clustered residential conservation overlay district, similar to the PRCD, but increased densities to accommodate the sewers. The one in the northwest area is due to the potential of the sewers coming from Galena, and the area to the south of Center Village is due to the sewers coming from the city of Columbus up to Smothers Road roundabout by 2026. The purple area represents the rural town center overlay district. It would cover Center Village area and extend over to the school site. The southern area is the area we are proposing the mixed use, which are the blue areas along Fancher Road. So let's break this down a little bit further. This is the first area that I mentioned, which is the area where we are proposing to retain the existing PRCD district at net 2 acres. It includes the northeast area of the township between 605 and South County Line Road, all the way from the north township boundary line down to Center Village Road. And then on the west side of 605, it would go from Woodtown down to approximately Center Village Road. This again is the area where sanitary sewers are not expected in the near future. Let's walk through what one of these may look like. So this is a real-world example of how a PRCD would work. This is something that is currently going through the Township Zoning Commission for an area on the south side of Gorsuch Road along Harlem Road. The applicant for this PRCD provided this graphic to show how this parcel, 70-acre parcel, could be developed utilizing the current zoning, which is a 2-acre minimum. That would require no approvals through the township. They could simply go and subdivide it utilizing the existing zoning. This layout does not take into account any of the watersheds, any of the natural features, and it includes housings backing up to Harlem Road and fronting Gorsuch Road. As an alternative, the developer is proposing to pull down the PRCD overlay district and to cluster the same number of units on 50% of the land. The remaining 50% of the land would stay as permanent open space. And as you can see by this graphic, the open space takes into effect the watershed areas, the drainage. It also provides a large buffer along Harlem Road so that the houses significantly are set back from the existing roadway, so that when you're driving down the existing roads, you're not seeing rows of houses, you're seeing green space. Again, these are significant acreages of open space. Out of 70 acres, we're looking at approximately 35 acres of open space, and then clustering the remaining units on the other 50%. This slide represents the area where we are proposing the increased densities to accommodate sewers. The northwest area is bounded by the township line to the north, 605 to the east, Woodtown Road to the south, and the township line to the west. The other area is bounded by Center Village Road to the north, South County Line Road to the east, generally Fancher Road to the south, and then the west boundary line of the township to the west. These areas are potentially the areas where sewers will be coming in the near future, and we believe increased densities are needed to help support the sewers to avoid annexation and potential litigation that we've seen other communities lose their design and density controls to other communities. We are recommending that this area allow densities from 1 to 3 dwelling units in a conservation style where the units are clustered on 50% of the land and the remaining 50% is retained as green space. In addition to the densities, we are recommending that design standards be built into the overlay district. Some of the design standards we are recommending are preserving existing natural tree lines. So when you drive down a 605 or a Harlem Road or whatever other existing roadway is there today, where you see those natural tree lines or even in between properties, maintain those existing tree lines, put the houses behind it. That there be at least a 200-foot buffer from any existing township or county road. If there are not existing trees, making sure that in that 200-foot setback that there are native plantings or other types of architectural features that buffer the houses from the existing roadways, but maintain the rural aesthetic feel. Some questions we get are, how are these developments going to be supported as far as maintenance and the type of infrastructure that needs to go in to support them? How are those costs going to be covered? So the quick strategy guide recommends that these increased density conservation districts be paired with what's called a new community authority. This is a public-private partnership that's allowed under the Ohio Revised Code that would require a partnership between the county, the township, the developer, where a development charge is assessed to the new lots being built in the township within the NCA defined area. So this new development charge does not go to existing lots or existing residents. It's only to the new ones coming into the township and within the boundary defined by the new community authority. That development charge, in turn, can be funneled back to the partnering entities. So a portion of it could go to the township for road maintenance. It could go to help build a firehouse. It could also go, if a school were to come to the table, partner with them. Funding from the NCA development charge could be funneled to the school district for building a new school or acquiring a new school site. So it's very flexible in what those fundings are utilized. A portion of the funding does go for the original construction, but over time, that funding also gets funneled into the maintenance and services that the township can provide. The next area is the Rural Town Center Overlay District. This, as I mentioned before, would cover the existing Center Village area and then also extend over to the Souter School site so that we could create a walkable community in and around the existing Center Village. It also extends to the south to the Township Hall area as well as the park and maintenance area across the street from the Township Firehouse. Within the Rural Town Center, we are recommending a year-round indoors farmers market to be constructed on the south side of this Rural Town Center across the street from the firehouse where the old concrete plant used to sit. It would be adjacent to the existing park and would provide an area that would create a walkable community between the park, the indoor market, and potentially having bike paths or sidewalks up to the Rural Town Center. The market would be an area where farmers could aggregate their products. It is a way to keep the farmers who want to keep farming, gives them an outlet for their products. The example we are utilizing as a case study for this is Keller's Market House in Lancaster, Ohio. Fairfield County has deep agricultural roots and wanted to find ways to protect farmland and keep their farmers farming. They decided to institute the Keller's Market House approximately 7 or so years ago. It's been operating successfully since that time. In addition to aggregating the perishable products that farmers are able to provide, they also have other non-perishable foods. They have wine, they have coffee, they have artisanal crafts. They also do year-round events and rent event space so that it makes the farmers market successful on a year-round basis. Since it operates on a consignment basis, there are clear parameters, rules, and regulations that all vendors must follow. The quick strategy guide includes the breakdown of how the nonprofit was formed, its current structure, and its current rules, regulations, and consignment rates to help provide guidance to the township on how to implement and move forward with this potential type of year-round market in the future. Last but not least is the mixed-use area on the south side of the township. We have mixed-use A and mixed-use B. Mixed-use B is the denser of the two proposed mixed-use areas. Mixed-use B is located to the east of Harlem Road and then all going over to around Fancher Cemetery. It takes in the trailer park area, several businesses, and some vacant land. We are recommending up to 12 dwelling units per acre in this area, and we're doing this for 2 reasons. One, we believe that there is potential threat for future annexation into the city of Columbus in this area. The city of Columbus has a 12 dwelling unit per acre zoning district. We want to offer a zoning district that is comparable to what the city of Columbus could provide. Second of all, the trailer park is located within this area. If you do the density calculations on the trailer park, they are at least 12, if not more, units per acre. So the density is already there. So we believe that increasing the density will help prevent annexation. Moving towards the east, we reduce the proposed densities down to 8 dwelling units per acre. We remain on the south side of Fancher Road until we get just west of Green Cook Road. At that point, we do bump it to both sides of the road and then carry it on to South County Line Road. We also take the mixed use area A up several parcels along South County Line Road. We do this because we see the land assembly taking place just east of South County Line Road. We believe that there's potential threat for annexation in this area as well, and that we need potential ways to prevent annexation in the future. We are proposing that we pair these mixed-use areas with what is called a Joint Economic Development District, otherwise known as a JED. This is a partnership between the township and an adjacent municipality. It allows the township to assess an income tax equal to the partnering municipality's income tax. That income tax applies to all new businesses and all new residents within a mixed-use development. The income tax that's generated from those new uses, not existing businesses, not existing residents, but from the new businesses and new mixed-use developments. That income that's generated is then funneled back into the township's general revenue fund. It can be used for any purpose at that point in time, from administrative services to fire services to road maintenance, for any general governmental purpose. So it increases the township's revenue budgets going forward to help sustain future development. The other thing that a JED does is to help prevent annexation. The Ohio Revised Code limits a partnering municipality from annexing the land within the JED for a period of 3 years. So automatically, the township is protected for a minimum of 3 years. But I argue that it actually protects it for a longer period. JEDs are typically a 100-year period. And once a JED income tax goes into place, annexing over top of it does not make the JED income tax go away. So property owners don't want to annex once a JED is in place, because then they would have both the income tax from the municipality and the JED tax. So it would be a double taxation. So it effectively acts as a barrier to annexation. So for these reasons, we are recommending the densities and the Joint Economic Development District to help protect the township's borders from future annexations. We also believe that design standards need to be put into place within these mixed-use areas to ensure that the rural character is maintained as development moves forward. Crossroads and the Strategic Planning Committee have gathered various examples of mixed-use developments that meet the type of architecture that the township is desiring. These are examples to use as inspiration for future developers. Looking at the top left-hand corner is an indoor-outdoor recreation center with a red barn-like feeling. On the top middle row is an assisted living facility with stone and the white barn type feeling. Assisted living is a targeted land use in this area. We have an aging population in Harlan Township, and this would allow for the densities that are proposed within these mixed-use areas and also allow for its residents to age in place. On the top right-hand corner is what's called the Barn District. It's a mixed-use development that includes a winery, a daycare, other commercial and residential uses, and a walkable setting, but they all have a barn-style development. On the bottom left-hand corner is an equestrian center. Harlan Township is home to several horse farms. Let's expand our business opportunities with the equestrian theme and keep the farm feeling as we drive down our township roads. The bottom middle is a more walkable mixed-use commercial development. And then the bottom right-hand corner is a neighborhood commercial. It looks very residential, but it is actually a neighborhood commercial use set in a walkable setting. We believe it's necessary that these building materials, architectural styles, roof pitches, and other standards be incorporated to ensure that we meet the residents' demands for quality development in Harlem Township. So to wrap up our recommendations, we are also recommending that the township continue to collaborate with governmental partners, developers, landowners, and residents. We understand that some residents want to preserve their land and some want to develop. So it's important that the township continue conversations with individual landowners to understand the potential for development on certain parcels and the preservation on other parcels so that we can properly plan as we go into the future. We are also calling for a new east-west connector road. At this point in time, the specific connection road has not been identified. The Quick Strategy Guide does mention the use of Fancher Road and extending the Smothers Road roundabout to connect up to Fancher Road. However, Licking County Transportation Improvement District is completing a traffic study for the area within a 10-minute drive of Intel. We are participating in those meetings, funneling land uses into that study so that when they come out with the recommendations, we'll have a better understanding of the road improvements needed in Harlem Township. We're also recommending regional detention. Instead of individual detention ponds for individual developments, let's look at it from a regional perspective. Larger regional detention ponds, not with the hard edges and water features of typical suburban developments, but soft edges, tree-lined edges that give a more rural aesthetic feeling. Also, identifying walkways, bikeways, bridleways, and park connections. And let's not put our bikeways just immediately adjacent to the existing roadways in a very suburban fashion. Let's intertwine them through our developments, intertwine them through existing tree lines to create an aesthetic feel, rural aesthetic feel as we ride our bicycles and ride through the township. Finally, we did hear from the residents that they wanted ways to permanently protect farmland and other open spaces. While it may not be financially feasible for some landowners, there are some legacy landowners that would like to protect their land regardless of the cost. For this reason, we have provided a menu of options for protecting farmland and open space that are driven by a property owner. So a property owner can go to the plan, find the menu, find the resources, click on the links, and start researching those various options. We also heard from the residents that they would like to look more into how to protect land through a tax levy for purchasing strategic parcels. There is a model in Granville Township in Licking County that has been utilized in this exact way over the past several years. We've included that model in the Quick Strategy Guide so the township can better understand it and see how it could possibly be applied in Harlem Township in the future. I do give the caveat of the rising property costs and how that translates into millage, and would strongly urge the township to look into a second survey once those costs are determined, if that were be something they were to pursue down the road. Thank you again for joining us during this presentation. Our next step will be to take the Quick Strategy Guide to the Zoning Commission for a recommendation on February 16th at 7:30 p.m. After that, we are hoping the Zoning Commission will make its recommendation to the trustees, who would then hold a public hearing when we hope to be sometime in March. Once the trustees approve the Quick Strategy Guide, it becomes policy. It does not become law. It does not become anything enforceable. It is strictly policy. So once the Quick Strategy Guide gets approved, then we need to take steps above and beyond this to make actual zoning laws to implement the recommendations of these plans. So it's our intent that if this plan gets approved in March, that we would move quickly into the implementation of zoning overlay districts per the recommendations of the Quick Strategy Guide, and that we continue to create public-private partnerships recommended in the Quick Strategy Guide, such as the JED and the NCAs. Are you looking for ways that you can help? We encourage you to share this information with your neighbors. Have them watch this video. The more that we can educate and get the information out to our residents, the better we can plan and the better that this Quick Strategy Guide will be implemented. We also encourage you to give us your contact information, especially your email address. The more emails that we can get and utilize, the quicker and better we can communicate with our residents. Finally, feel free to join us for a strategic planning committee meeting. We meet the first and the third Tuesdays of every month at 6:30 p.m. at the Township Hall. Come be a part of the planning for the future of Harlem Township. We would love to see you there. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great week.